Welcome back to another video. This week I've travelled to Krakow in Poland to compete in another UTR PTT event. I won my opening match in the group stage against one of the highest ranked players in the tournament. To make it to the semi-finals, I have to win my remaining 3. But before that, if you haven't done already, I'd really appreciate it if you could like, subscribe and turn on those notifications. Anyway, back to the video. So, like I said at the start of the video, I won my opening match against one of the highest ranked players in the tournament, the highest ranked player in my group. And today I was taking on Gabriel Matuszewski. God, these names don't get any easier to pronounce, do they? His UTR was a tiny bit higher than mine, and he was Polish, so I imagine he's played at this club before. So he wasn't to be underestimated. My intention in this match was pretty simple. Try to keep on the front foot as much as possible, keep those first serve percentages nice and high, and try and get the first strike in. The court was playing slightly different to the day before. It was drier and faster, so it really suited that first strike mentality. And even though I felt I was serving great, especially at the start of the match, so was my opponent. He'd actually gone with the tactic of slightly slowing down his first serve, targeting my backhand and then moving to the net. And he's also mixing in a lot of the drop shots. And just because he was playing so well initially, and his game style really matched up to this surface, it did make me think whether this was the surface that he trained on, or maybe he played a lot of tournaments on this surface. I don't know, but he was proving very difficult to break down. He wasn't putting me under huge pressure on my serve, so it was just about staying patient and waiting for the chance to break. Things often start to get a lot more interesting around the 4-all mark. I knew that if I could get a really convincing hold in this 4-all game and raise my energy, then a break would become even more likely at 5-4. I said to myself at the change of ends that this was the game to break. I told myself that every return was going in the court, and after the return I was going to hit the first 2 balls down the middle if I had to. I knew that I'd have chances. This serve in particular was starting to kill me. It was so frustrating because on a hard court I'd be able to move there and drive that return, but he was just managing to find that small pocket that was forcing me to slice. But anyway, I was at 30-all. My mindset here was do not give anything away for free. Stay in the point for as long as you have to. Just do not miss. I knew that the momentum was very close to shifting firmly into my favour. And my opponent wanted to move forward, so I was going to try and keep him at the back as much as possible. And that's what I was waiting for. Just slightly the wrong shot selection, and I was in. Here I anticipated that my opponent was going to serve and volley and decided to throw in a little dip at the feet, and it worked. I took the first set 6-4. At the start of the second set, my opponent loosened up a bit, went up a break, and was playing very well. I was going to have to stay very mentally calm here, raise my game and stay patient. I would get another chance to break, but it might not be straight away. So I was going to focus on everything that I could control, mainly holding serve, and making sure that I was putting as many returns in as possible. Because the court was so hard to move on, sometimes really simple shots become very difficult. Normally, I love my backhand return, but on this court, I was finding it very, very difficult. Once the ball was a few feet away from me, I was having to resort to the slice. And my opponent was mixing up his serving very well. Not serving massive, but getting the ball to move a lot, which is super important on this surface. And to be honest, things weren't looking amazing. I was 3-2 down a break. You know, I didn't really want to go to a third set, but I knew that I was just going to have to stay calm, stay patient, and I would get the chance to shift the momentum back into my favour. And soon enough, it happened. After a confident hold at 3-all, I could feel there was another break on its way. I just had to stay patient and ride out my opponent's periods of good play. So I got the opportunity that I was looking for, and I could not believe what happened in this point. No way did he make that. I just thought that surely I'd won the point from that position. But anyway, my opponent managed to hold from break point down and shifted the pressure back onto me at 4-all to hold myself. Sometimes it's hard after you've had such a good chance to break your opponent's serve, especially at this moment in the match, and then you've got to come out and hold again and then look for another chance to break in your opponent's next service game. It's all about just staying focused on the point that you're playing and not worrying about what's happened in the previous game or previous point. And that's what I was struggling with a little bit here. My mind kept flicking back to that breakpoint opportunity, and I was almost thinking to myself, this should be match point. But obviously it wasn't, and I had to get over it. I really had to raise my energy after getting through that game, knowing that I was going to have to be really on it to get the break at 5-4. And weirdly, my opponent gave me a few errors, which I wasn't expecting, but I guess pressure can do some crazy things. So I took the match in straight sets, 6-4, 6-4, and things were looking good. Life off the court in Krakow was awesome. I was spending time with such a good group of lads. Great banter, great vibes. And Krakow itself was one of the most beautiful cities that I've ever been to. The atmosphere was just incredible. When everything is set up for you off the court, it just makes the tennis so much more enjoyable. Anyway, enough of the bromance, back to the tennis, what we're all here for. It's day 3 and it's raining again. So with matches heavily delayed, we started about 4 hours behind schedule. And my opponent today was Tobias Sopolinski. I think I nailed that one. He had an absolute cannon. That means big serve, by the way. So I knew on this surface, things were not going to be easy. And because it had rained so much, the court had become very slow, very hard to move on. And I was just really struggling to hit through the ball. It felt like the ball was heavy and it was going nowhere. Even though I didn't feel like my opponent was really strong from the baseline, he managed his game well and gave himself time to get in better positions. And he was also moving forward a lot and serving out of a tree. I don't think I've ever been aced so much in my life. So the goal in this match was going to be very clear. Look after my serve at all costs and just make as many returns as possible, no matter how scrappy it got. It was one of those weird matches that behind my serve, I felt really good. I felt smooth, I felt like I had time. And then on my opponent's serve, it just felt like I was barely touching the ball. Even when I won points on my opponent's serve, it was more than likely just a mistake from him. I didn't really get many chances to settle in the rallies and actually play the game that I wanted to. It was very reactive. And he was mixing things up very well because I was stood really far back to return his serve, and he was bringing in a lot of drop shots, and obviously it's so difficult to move forward on this surface. You almost have to guess a little bit. But like the match in the previous day, I was sensing that eventually I would get a chance. And towards the latter stages of the set, I was starting to work my way into my opponent's service games. The chances were becoming more and more frequent. But for the meantime, he was just managing to wriggle out of them. I had to get the balance right of trying to break, but also focusing on holding my own serve. I couldn't get too invested in breaking my opponent's serve. I had to save some level of focus for my own. I feel like my game was being pulled to two extremes. Playing very, very aggressive behind my own serve, and then returning was extremely defensive, which isn't normally my usual plan. I like to attack my opponent's serve, take it on, especially the second serve. But here, because of my opponent and the court, the conditions, I just simply wasn't getting those opportunities to take the return on as much as I wanted to. So I was just going to have to be patient and wait for those chances to come about. Even though my opponent had the lowest UTR in the group, I definitely didn't feel like he was playing like that. And there were all sorts of thoughts going on in my head. Like, is he going to be serving like this the whole match? Is he going to be playing like this the whole match? Because if so, this is going to be very difficult. I managed to get very lucky on his serve at 6-5 to get the break and the first set. The plan of making as many returns as possible worked. I managed to squeeze 2 or 3 errors in one game, but I had a feeling that my opponent wasn't going to go away. I knew that because he had a big game, big serving, all he had to do was hang around on his own service games, and he might get the chance of a break. There was definitely a change of tactics from him. He started to make more balls, started to play with a little bit less pace down the middle of the court, just offering me not a lot to work with. Not much in terms of angles or pace. And like I said before, the conditions were pretty heavy, it had rained a lot, so I was really having to work to get anything on the ball. And because there was this thought of my opponent being very difficult to break, it made me play with a lot more margin on my own service game, so I was very careful not to give away any sloppy errors, get broken. And for a big guy, my opponent moved very well, defended well, and just overall made things pretty tricky. I was pretty happy with the way that I started this second set, not many errors, and some very aggressive attacking tennis. I just couldn't get a break. Each time that I got close to my opponent's serve, he would just come up with something, a big serve and a good third ball, or even 2 first serves at times. And this time at 4-all, as I was saying earlier, the pressure can really come out. And this time it was me that was really starting to feel it. I made a few really bad errors, especially that one at 30-all with the forehand in the net. A slight bit of panic had just crept into my game, and my opponent was doing very well to make me play as many balls as he did. It's crazy how quickly the momentum can shift in matches. 1 minute I'm cruising on serve, serving really well, and then the next minute I've got break points and my opponent comes out with that. I was hopeful. I know that there's always a chance to break back in these situations, and I was obviously going to do my best to try and get the break back, get back to 5-all, because I definitely didn't want to go to 3 sets with the possibility of losing the match as well, but also to give myself the best chance of finishing first in the group. I ideally needed to win in straight sets, which probably wasn't going to happen now. To be honest, my opponent deserved to win that second set. He played well and took the ball on. I was going to have to reset and change up my tactics a little bit. I was thinking that I was going to go even more aggressive and try and take on my opponent's first serve, which I'd pretty much been chipping it back in the whole match. And I could see that that change in tactic had immediately started to work. The ball was almost coming back too quick for my opponent to handle. And just like that, I got 2 breakpoint opportunities and took it on the first one. Upper break 3-1, things looked like they were going pretty well. I was feeling really comfortable in the way that I was playing, and it was effective. My opponent didn't really look like he had the answers for the way that I was playing. The question was, as the set went on, could I keep producing that level? By this time, we'd been playing for nearly 2.5 hours. And although the match wasn't really physical, I was starting to fight a little bit of fatigue. I'd played so many matches in the last 2 weeks. My body was definitely starting to feel it. But I'd also been winning a lot of those matches, so my confidence was pretty high. I guess you can't have one without the other. At this point, I was really starting to feel like the end of the match was close. I almost had one eye on the finishing line, and I was trying so hard to just keep focused on the way that I was playing and what was working. But a few tight points led me back to a break point for my opponent, and the ball shot through and I ended up giving away a really cheap game, to be honest. And my opponent fully capitalized on that shift in momentum. And before I knew it, we were back to 4-all. And to be honest, here, my focus could have easily shifted to panic, I've lost the lead. But my mindset was actually in a really positive place. All I wanted to do was improve on the previous service game. I wanted to be brave, I wanted to go after it. I wanted to commit to my first serve instead of just getting it in. And when I was in the rallies, I wanted to move forward, I wanted to come to the net and finish the point off. And at this point, I wasn't even worried about the score. I was obviously aware of it. But I really managed to regain that sense of process and regain that focus that was helping me to win in the first place. In my head, I knew that this was a great chance to finish the match here, but I'd accepted that it might not happen. And the only way it was going to happen is if I stuck to the process, trying to take the ball on, do the things that were getting me into that winning position in the first place. And although it took more bravery to take those returns on, and it was harder to do, when I got it right, the reward was huge. So we were locked in at deuce. If this match didn't end here, then I knew things could get really tricky. My opponent was only getting more and more comfortable, and I just felt the longer things went on, the more that they were playing to his favour. I earned my first match point. which was saved confidently by my opponent, putting away a very difficult smash, and then weirdly missing a very simple volley, giving me another chance, another match point. And this time, my opponent missed the smash. I was very happy with the win and to come through that, but it felt a lot more like relief, because a lot of the time, the match wasn't really on my racket. My opponent was playing so big that at times, it was hard to get in control of the rallies, and I was almost just waiting for him to miss.
Dennis. Go on, Sean.
Come on.
You look like a natural, mate.
Okay, I'm actually throwing this out. The fucking chicken. Chicken's been
Oh, yeah.
it's like literally.
We're at Kids Shine.
There's like holes in the chicken.
We're at Kids Shine. Let's go, Ollie. Against all odds.
Against all odds.
Don't use my name against me.
Mrs. Hotfire.
Kit Sean Hodkin. Oh.
No one likes me.
It's day 5. Day 4 was actually my day off. And it's a big day for the group stage. I had one match remaining, and if I won, I'd finish number 1 in the group. If I lost, there's a possibility that I could finish 3rd. And that would mean there would be a 3-way tie in the group. And it could come down to sets or even games. The prize money jump from finishing 3rd to 1st was pretty big. And if I finished 3rd, I obviously couldn't win the event. So my opponent today was a fellow Brit, Luca Blewett. He's 19 years old and has a UTR of 12.43, the second highest UTR in our group, and a game style that really suited this surface. Very good mover, solid on both sides, and moved forward very well with good hands and good feel around the net. So I was looking at this match as probably the toughest match of the week, but I was ready for it. The first few opening games were a real battle. I felt like it didn't take Luca long at all to get settled into the match. And straight away we were locked in with a few juices, some very tight points, break points either way, but both of us just managing to hold on to serve. I feel like out of all the players in the group, Luca was the one who could challenge me the most on my serve. He has that really short, sharp, punchy backhand return, which was causing me a lot of trouble when I was trying to hit my kick serve to his backhand. And he was just taking it early, taking it on, and he was managing to use that early backhand return to get me off the court. So one of my focuses in this match was, whenever it came to a big moment, to always try and make a first serve. Just trying not to give him a chance to attack my second serve. And also then mixing up my second serve, trying to throw more body serves in than I have been doing in the previous days. Maybe even serving to his forehand a little bit more. Even though his serve wasn't blowing me off the court, he was following it up pretty well with a little bit of serve and volley and taking those third balls really early. So it was very hard for me to settle into his service games. I'll be honest, all the way through this first set, I was thinking about the group stage, results, winning this match, obviously the difference in prize money, and then also my opponent playing very well. And I knew that my focus wasn't really where it should have been, and I was starting to get a little bit frustrated, and I maybe wasn't seeing things as clear as I was in the last few matches. I was still there to fight and work hard, but something just felt a little bit off. But I remember thinking to myself, this is tennis, when is it ever going to be perfect? Probably never. So all I could do was just accept what was going on, accept my situation, take a few deep breaths and just put my focus right back into the process, where it should be. And if I lost, then at least I could say that I've done my best and I've focused on the right things. And that is literally what I was thinking at the change of ends at 6-5 as my opponent was about to serve for it. And it was weird because after that first set, I just felt like I'd calmed down completely, almost accepted that I could lose, that I could be third in the group, and all that hard work at the start of the week wasn't going to be rewarded with money. And after accepting all of that, I felt like I was in a great headspace to make a comeback in this match. My body was pretty fresh, I'd just had a day off. The first set wasn't hugely physical. As long as I could mentally stay there, then I was in with a shout. But I was facing 3 break points. Sure hit. This first service game was turning into a real battle. I was sensing that if I could stay tough here, this game could really be a turning point in the momentum. It was still just neck and neck, neither one of us able to get a long streak of points together. Every game hitting deuce or 30 all. It was pretty relentless from both sides. I'd finally managed to break through. Now it was all about keeping my foot on the gas and not letting him back into this set. Out of nowhere, it seemed that I'd found another gear to my game. But to be honest, this is what I'd been practicing in the hours, days, weeks of training leading up to this tournament block.
Game.
So I took the second set 6-3, and I was feeling strong and confident that I was in the right place mentally to take on this third set. With my focus fully on the process, I was ready to fight through these games and leave it all out there. I mean, some of these games were just ridiculous. I'm knackered watching them back. God knows how I played them.
Oh.
Both of us just refusing to back down. We both definitely knew what was to play for. All the way through this set, I was just trying to keep my energy really high. Even when I didn't feel super confident, I was just always showing that I was up for it, and I was going to work for every point. Even though it's hard sometimes not to be frustrated or not happy with the way things are going, I was just doing my best trying not to show that. All through this game at 3-2, I was being put under massive pressure on my serve, forced into some pretty uncomfortable situations, and because the surface is so hard to move on, when you come in forward it can make quick adjustments really difficult, so you almost have to guess which way the ball's going. I remember thinking that this point was huge. If I could just get through this game, then I knew that I would have a chance to break.
Go!
Let's go! Let's go!
Game.
I remember thinking at 4-all I was going to change my tactics slightly. The whole way through this set I was committing to taking on my opponent's first serve, and I was rarely slicing. So as it was 4-all, and this is where people can really feel the pressure, I decided to just change it up and chip the return back in and make as many as possible. And then also keep my targets really simple on the next 2 shots, not trying to force anything or go for too much.
Good.
So I got the break, 5-4 up, serving to win the match and go number 1 in the group. Could I hold?
Good. Good.
Unfortunately, I let the pressure get the better of me. I made some pretty stupid decisions and managed to get broke. But there was no time to dwell on it. I'd broken my opponent in his last service game. There was no reason why I couldn't do it again. It was time to lock in and go again. I got another chance at a break, but got a little bit tentative on the return. It's always easy to say that you should have gone after it, but sometimes it's hard to do it in the moment. I was still in a good position, 6-5 on serve. A solid hold would do to take us into a tiebreak.
Out. Game. Hodkin. Po 6.
I'm not going to lie, I was really starting to feel the nerves in the beginning of this tiebreak. I knew that I was only 7 points away from potentially a lot more cash. But I knew this and I was going to do my best to try and stay focused and not get distracted.
Out.
I got a very good start to this tiebreak. Now, it was all about being rock solid and making sure that I didn't panic or try to force anything. Just play the percentages.
Out.
Things were getting a little bit scrappy, but I was still feeling good. I was coming out of most of the exchanges on top.
Out. Out.
So, I had 3 match points, and I didn't want this match to get any closer. I remember thinking to myself here on this second serve, just commit to something with a lot of racket head speed and a lot of spin, even if it just goes in the middle of the box, and then I can work something out from there.
Game. Submit.
And I did it, nearly falling over in the process. Finishing first in a group stage for the first time in nearly 2 years. and I was very pumped with that win. Very pumped with the whole week so far. Not just because I was winning, but because I was managing to overcome challenges that previously I was really struggling with. The worries about the money or the lack of match wins, they're all still there, but I've found a way to put them to the back of my mind and focus on the tennis. That's what I'm really happy about. Join me next time to find out how I got on in the semi-final. Once again, big thank you to everybody watching, all of my subscribers. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.